This is the Your Career Story podcast, and you're listening to episode 45, The Foolproof Way to Answer, Tell Me About Yourself. Welcome to Your Career Story podcast, a show that's designed for rockstar professionals looking for that extra booster shot of confidence in their careers. Whether you're trying to get clarity on a job transition, want some work-life balance inspiration, or need a strategy to snag that promotion or raise, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Jenna Viviano, ex-Wall Streeter turned startup junkie who now coaches hundreds of clients, empowering them to take back control of the job search and land their dream job. So sit back, grab a glass of wine, and prepare yourself for your weekly boost of career confidence. Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Your Career Story podcast. I'm super excited to continue this journey with you in 2020. How are we already at the end of January? Where has this month gone? I don't know about you, but I'm getting a lot of people that are reaching out to me saying, oh my gosh, it's the end of January and I feel like I should have started looking for a job already and I haven't. So if that's you, don't worry, you're in good company. We are here to help with that. And today's episode is a very practical, tactical, instructional episode to kind of piggyback us off of what we talked about last week, which was really an inspirational story of a client of mine who was able to go from $90,000 to $120,000 in a year, actually a little bit less than a year, and make 2 career pivots during that process. And so if you haven't listened to that episode yet, I give you some pointers as to what she did really, really well. And the other thing that she did really, really well was she was able to answer the question, tell me about yourself, in a succinct manner. And we worked on that together on how she was going to express that. But this episode is going to give you instructions on how to do that for yourself. And as always, we're always here to help if you're interested in being a part of our program that really dives deep into, this is only kind of the surface level, but really dives deep into answering this question. And quite frankly, it's probably the most important question you could possibly be asked in an interview or quite frankly in your career. That's why it's the hardest to answer. So if you feel like this question for you is really hard to answer, really frustrating, you're not really sure what to say, what not to say, this episode today is for you. And make sure if you have other friends that are going through the job search process that you send it along to them because it's going to be really, really impactful. So this is the most common question that I get from people when talking about interviews. And quite frankly, when I'm on doing LinkedIn Lives on Tuesdays, when people are reaching out to me and saying, how do I answer this question? I don't know how to answer it. And so if you don't know how to answer this question for yourself at the end of this episode, we need to talk. So you can reach out to me via LinkedIn and we can make a connection there. We can hop on a phone call and see if our program is right for you. It's not right for everybody, and we'll tell you that. But this is the most common question I get. So if you don't know how to answer this, listen up. This strategy that I'm going to talk to you today about works for all levels. But it very specifically, what we're going to be talking about today and how I'm going to be framing it is really directed towards my CEO track level people. So anybody that's mid to senior level, so it's a more experienced hire. New grads, if you're listening to this, welcome to the party. I'm glad that you're already investing in your career growth and your professional growth and listening to things like this. But this is going to be a little bit more catered to my experienced hires who maybe have 10 plus years experience. They're probably making about 100, 150K plus in their careers. And they're really trying to learn how to sell themselves in an interview, which is ultimately answering the question, tell me about yourself. So this is, in my opinion, more than just an interview question though. This is really, how do you define your personal brand? Because when somebody asks you the question, tell me about yourself, they really are wanting to know, how can you help me? So that's the first thing, is a lot of us get this really, really wrong, in that we think that this question is where we're really supposed to tell them about ourselves, which we are, but it always needs to be slanted and positioned in a way that's compelling to the employer or the person listening to you. So I'm actually going to walk through a specific example of how I would answer this question for a famous person who is not working with me. None of these things are true about this person. But I'm going to actually show you an example of how I would do this. Let's say if Sarah Blakely, the founder and CEO of Spanx, was my client. So we're going to have a little bit of fun today. If she was my client and she was, for whatever reason, wanted to leave Spanx, again, not true. This is not some news bit. So don't go to CNBC and tell them we heard it on the Your Career Story podcast. It's Sarah Blakely's leaving Spanx. Not true. We're just using it for the purposes of this example. And let's say that she was interested in potentially working for Outdoor Voices. If you're not familiar with Outdoor Voices, they were an Austin-founded company, I believe, and founded by a female. And they are an apparel company, but they are specifically in like the athleisure department. So let's just say, for the purposes of this example, that Sarah Blakely heard through the grapevine that there is a CEO level position now going to be available at Outdoor Voices, and she is going to be positioning herself for that job. How would she do it? And how would I coach her through this? And the reason I want to use this example versus just giving you a bunch of steps is because I want you to see how it works out in real life. I do this with my clients, and honestly, I have not prepared for this. So this is going to be me riffing on how I would coach Sarah Blakely through this specific example. So I hope that you hear a little bit about what my coaching style is, but also just knowing that if you practice this over time, because I do this with every single one of my clients on pretty much every single one of my calls, even if we're not doing a interview prep type call, I really want them to be thinking about and continually practicing how to answer this question. Because again, it is your personal brand. It is how you describe yourself and how you answer this question really gets across the point of whether or not you are a hireable person or not. And that may seem a little drastic, but I believe that in an interview, this is oftentimes the very first question that you're going to be asked. You want to make sure that you have a really, really rock solid answer to this. So we're going to walk through an example as if Sarah Blakely was my client. But before we do that, I want to tell you what not to do when answering this question. So you want to be thinking about, like, last time I was in an interview, maybe it was yesterday, maybe it was a couple months ago, maybe it's been about a year or a couple years since you've been in an interview. Think about today, how would you answer the question, tell me about yourself? And I want you just to think through, how have you answered it before? Did that feel good? Did that not feel good? Why did it feel good? Why did it not feel good? So first, evaluate where you currently are at. And then I want to tell you, and I want you to hear this. This is what I don't want you to be doing. And these are common mistakes that people at every single level make, whether you're a new grad or you're on the CEO track or you are the CEO. I've worked with CEOs before, and this is still something that they struggle with and really not knowing how to solidify. And there's nothing embarrassing about that if you don't know how to tell your personal brand or tell your story in a compelling way. So here's what not to do. I don't want you to walk through your resume. So many people, when they get asked this question, they say, the employer says, hiring manager says, tell me about yourself. And the person will start at their bottom of their resume. Well, back in 2001, I worked at Auntie Anne's, which was my first job, by the way. I worked at Auntie Anne's, and over the course of these years, I went to here, and then I went here, and then I went here, and now I'm here talking to you. That is boring. No one really cares. Sorry, I'm being blunt here, but no one really cares. You don't want to walk through your resume, because at the end of the day, and especially if you're in a leadership position and you hired before, you're going to start to glaze over. If somebody starts walking you through your resume, you're going to glaze over. You don't want to hear it. You want to hear about the things that are most relevant that you care about. So when you're going into an interview and you're the one being interviewed, you need to make sure that you have positioned yourself and are only talking about the things that are relevant to what the employer cares about based off the job description. So a lot of you that are listening, maybe when you get a job description that you see online and you apply and you're really excited that you got the interview, you maybe glaze over the job description. And that is the one biggest mistake that frustrates me the most with most candidates, is that they don't treat the job description as a study guide. That is a big mistake. The job description is the best research you have before talking to people about what they really care about. They are giving you a blueprint about what's important to them. And so here's the big thing about that. If you are not looking at that job description, you're not going to really be able to know what do they care about. So if you're just thinking about, I'm just going to walk through my resume and hope that works and hope something sticks to the wall, you're already missing out. So don't walk through your resume. The other thing that I don't want you to do, and this is really hard, you have to change some mindsets and really get yourself prepared and amped up, especially as you're going into an interview, is to stumble and act unconfident. So this is the biggest thing. When somebody asks this question, actually, when I ask people who apply to be a part of the Recruit the Employer program, and we're having a conversation and I tell them, hey, I will let you know if you're a good fit for this program or not a good fit for this program. And I ask them the question, how would you answer? Tell me about yourself. And they just start stumbling through it. Now, I know they're caught off guard. They weren't expecting me to ask that question, but I ask that question because I really want to see how they answer it, how they tell their story, if they sound confident in who they are and what they're about and what they want to be doing in the future and how they can bring value. If they don't know how to do that, they're a great candidate for me. So if you are that person and you're thinking to yourself, Jenna, I don't know how to tell my story well, you are a great candidate to be a part of the Recruit the Employer program, because we fix that. But the people that act and stumble and act unconfident, they really, really don't know their personal brand. So if you don't know your personal brand, how can an employer decide if they want to work with you? If you don't know what value you can bring, if you don't know and act as the leader that you say that you want to be and act as the leader that you say that you are, how are they going to want to hire you? That is the biggest thing, is you cannot stumble and act unconfident. And one of the antidotes to that is getting really prepared beforehand about getting clarity on what your personal brand is and what you have to offer to an organization. The next thing is forgetting who you're speaking to. So whether you're speaking to a recruiter or you're speaking to a hiring manager, you have to answer this question a little bit differently. So, and also if you're speaking to somebody that's maybe the same level on your team. So for instance, if you're talking to a hiring manager, you want to be super clear that you're going to make their life easier. If you're talking to somebody that's maybe your peer, you're going to talk a little bit about how you're a great person to work with and work alongside, and that's going to help them take the load off of their pressure. So again, help them do what they need to do. And then with a recruiter, you just need to convince them to get you to the next level, right? So you need to alter this question based off of who you're speaking to. So many people, maybe they prepared for this answer and they write a script, but it doesn't change from person to person. So you really have to be agile and rephrase certain things for the audience that you're speaking to. So if you're speaking to just a similar way as if I'm going into maybe pitching for myself, right? So I did a podcast episode about how I pitched Jenna Kutcher, which is she's an entrepreneur. She's amazing. You should go back and listen to that episode. We'll include that in the show notes. But I talk a little bit about how I pitched her. So while I pitched her is very different than if I would pitch, she's an online entrepreneur, as if I would go and pitch, let's say, I don't know, the VP of HR at Dell. Like it would be a very different way that I would go about the pitching process because they have different goals and they have different reasons for wanting to bring me on their podcast or bring me into their organization, right? So the same thing holds true for you. You have to think about who is your audience? Who am I speaking to? The other thing that you do not want to do is speak in a bunch of buzzwords. So as soon as I remember when I was in the hiring process on the hiring side, when I worked at the Muse and sitting in on interviews, when candidates would start speaking in buzzwords, I would just stop listening. I don't know about you, but I feel like buzzwords, unless super, super relevant to the occupation or to the job that you're applying for, just create noise. And the last thing you want to do is not gain the attention of the employer or of the hiring manager or of the recruiter that's listening to you when you're answering this question. The number one thing that you need to do is engage them in your story, is to sound confident. It's to not walk them through the resume, but tell them what they need to know about you. And the last thing is keeping it the same forever. So what you have 2 years ago, maybe when you applied to jobs and interviewed for the job that you're in now, has to adapt and look differently for the jobs that you're applying for today. So this should be an evolving process because you have to remember, you are marketing yourself. Everything in the job search process, or just even if you're trying to promote yourself in whatever capacity, whether you're just trying to get promoted within or externally, you are marketing yourself. So you have to put on a marketing manager's cap, which is really hard to do. I get actually a lot of VP of marketing folks that will come to me, that will hire me to help them brand themselves because they do it for their companies, but they can't do it for themselves. By the way, this is totally normal. And a lot of people struggle with that. I know that for myself, I had to hire outside help to help me brand myself better. So don't feel any shame around that. All right. So those are the things not to do. Don't walk through your resume. Don't speak for ages. So I had, there was a member of the Muse C-suite team that was telling me about an experience when she was hiring somebody and had them on the interview, and she asked them, tell me about yourself. And she literally looked at her clock and she didn't stop the girl. The girl talked for 30 minutes about herself. And that's just wrong, right? Like if you go into a networking situation and you're just talking about yourself, the other person's not going, this is like a cardinal rule. The other person's not going to feel excited or feel good about your interaction. Now, if you ask them a bunch of questions and you make it more of a conversation and they get to talk about themselves, they're going to feel really good about the conversation, right? So the same thing holds true in an interview. You have to make sure that you are being short, sweet, to the point, you're engaging, you're making it relevant for them, and that you're marketing yourself in a way that's confident and compelling. If you do those things in the answer to tell me about yourself, you're on the right track. So hopefully you guys that are listening right now, that you're thinking about the answer of how you would answer that now, it's maybe changing how you would think about answering this question. And that is a great, great thing. Don't worry if you've messed up in the past. It's time to move forward, to change and to evolve and to make sure that you're shaping this in a way that's going to be compelling for the employer. So let's walk through an example. I'm going to walk through Sarah Blakely. I actually have her LinkedIn profile up here right now. I love her. Sarah Blakely, again, is the CEO and founder of Spanx. She started it in 2000, had only $5,000 in personal savings to start it, never took outside funding. She is a rock star, and I look up to her a lot. I think she's just done amazing things for women. Just in general, honestly, I think she's just a powerhouse, and she's kind and she's funny and she's herself, and she has a really fun family. If you want to follow along with her on Instagram, I'm not on Instagram anymore, and I'm really sad because I love her posts. But she is just an amazing, amazing CEO. But let's just say, for the purposes of this exercise, that she is looking to move on to the next thing, which she probably will never do. But let's say she does, and she wants to go to Outdoor Voices, and Outdoor Voices is bringing her in from maybe like a mid-round interview, and the board of directors is interviewing her, and they're asking the question, tell me about yourself. So here's the thing that she's going to be thinking about as she's going into this interview. And this is how I encourage my clients to go through this. She's going to look at the job description that they described, and she's going to look through it. She's going to skim it first. Then she's going to read it very thoroughly. Then she's going to print it out and use it as a study guide. And she's going to highlight through the main ideas of the role. So what a lot of people do, and what a lot of you are probably doing, is you'll scroll down to the bottom of the job description, and you'll see like, requirements, and just think that you're not qualified. So you'll completely opt yourself out. So you're not going to do that if you're Sarah Blakely, right? And if we're thinking that we're CEO track level women moving in that direction and want to be perceived as a leader in our industry, whatever that may look like, and look up to women like Sarah Blakely, we're not going to even think about the requirements, right? So she's going to be entering into this, and she's going to look and see, what is the main idea of this role, specifically at this company? What does the board of directors really care about the person who's in the CEO spot to have, to be able to accomplish? What goals are they expecting them to receive? So she's not even thinking about herself yet. She's first thinking about, what does the company care about? What's in it for them, right? Like, the ideal person for this role has what 3 characteristics? And kind of using like 3rd grade context clues and main idea, looking at the paragraph and picking out the main idea, like that's what you need to do as an adult in the working world trying to change jobs. You have to look at that job description from a different lens. And so once you're able to do that, it's actually, she's going to be looking and she's going to see that, hey, the person who does this job has to be really, really good at thinking outside the box. From this job description, they're telling me that they're looking to move in a totally different direction. They're looking to expand their reach. They're looking to develop this brand more thoroughly and more wide-ranging. So they need somebody who's going to be an innovator. That's the first thing that I'm reading from this job description. Then Sarah's going to say to herself, okay, it also looks like they're looking for people to create results, which makes sense as a CEO. Probably revenue is kind of important. My assumption is, because I'm Sarah Blakely and I am somebody who is a thought leader, I'm somebody who knows what I'm talking about, she's going to think, okay, so they're also going to need somebody who's going to create steady results, because having innovation sometimes is a little scary for employers. So they're also going to want to know that this innovator also has the ability to create steady results. So that's the second thing that this person who is in this job needs to be able to do. The third thing that they need to be able to do is to engage teams. And so she's going to look in there and think, okay, the teams that they have right now, how can I come in and be that person to engage those teams? What are some examples of things that I've done in the past to do that? And then finally, they need somebody to be a decision maker. And heck, I'm Sarah Blakely. I'm feisty. I'm a feisty decision maker. And so these are the 4 things that this person or this company or this board of directors really needs to have for their CEO. They need somebody who's an innovator, somebody to produce results, somebody to engage teams, and somebody to be a decision maker. And then what she's going to do is she's going to think about herself, which we've already kind of weaved some of that in there. She's going to think about herself and she's going to say, okay, I'm an innovator. I've proven that by working at Spanx and by founding Spanx, by being able to develop different product lines. I've been able to produce steady results. So even in my innovation, we've been able to produce steady results, and we haven't even needed to take outside funding. Then she's going to think, okay, I've been able to engage those teams. I've been able to grow my team to X amount of people over the course of the past 20 years. And I've been able to empower those teams to really build up women and diversity. That's really important. And I've been able to change lives in the process. So I know how to engage teams really, really well. And then finally, most CEOs, the problem with what makes a good CEO versus a bad CEO, because she's Sarah Blakely and she knows this, right? She's experienced a lot of CEOs and met lots of CEOs. She's able to see that, okay, a really great CEO is somebody who is able to make really good decisions. They're not somebody who waffles. They take directive and they make a decision and they move forward. And she's going to think to herself, I'm a feisty decision maker. I would be perfect for this job. So she's first framing the scene. And this is how I want you to think about yourself, is once you read that job description, is going through, creating the main ideas, and then seeing how you fit into the puzzle. ultimately a company really cares about you producing results for them. So at the end of the day, and I've done this with every single one of my clients, it's thinking through whether you are garbage man or you're the CEO of a company, you're either making a company money, you're saving a company money, or you're making someone's life easier, right? So you're making a company money, saving a company money, or making someone's life easier. In the instance of Sarah Blakely, if she's applying to an Outdoor Voices CEO position, she is going to make the company money and she's going to make someone's life easier. Those are probably the two main things that she wants to get across when she's going through the process of applying, interviewing with the board of directors, right? So she's thinking about, okay, job description, who's the best person for the job? I'm obviously the best person for this job. Now, how am I the best person for the job? So when someone in a board of directors asks the question and says, Sarah, why don't you tell me about yourself? It's probably kind of laughable, right? Because she's Sarah Blakely and everyone knows who she is if you're in that sphere. But this is how she would go about answering this question. Just say, sure. She would start off with talking about who she is. Currently, I'm the founder and CEO of Spanx. And if you're not familiar with Spanx, Spanx is really known for inventing smarter and more comfortable must-haves for women in leggings, activewear, bras, undies, you name it. We're known for wearing our bras over our clothes. Like that's just what we're known for. That's who I am. Now, a little bit about how I got there. I started at Spanx in 2000 with $5,000 in personal savings. We've never taken any outside investments. So I know how to scale appropriately with steady results over time. But really what I'm excited to talk to you today about is this opportunity here at Outdoor Voices. I really firmly believe that you're going to need somebody in this role who can innovate proactively, who is looking forward at the trends. And I think I'm happy to discuss this. But as we look at my past experience of working with Spanx and the things we've been able to accomplish and innovate over the past 20 years, you're going to be able to see that I can do that and that I'm able to think ahead of the curve. And that's what you guys need here at Outdoor Voices if you want to be a sustainable company. The second thing that you're going to really need from a CEO is you're going to need somebody who is, while they're an innovator, they're not crazy, right? You're going to need somebody who's going to be able to produce steady results. And those results are going to be somebody who understands how the revenue structure works of the organization, who understands this industry in general of the apparel industry, which Spanx is one of the forerunners in this. So you're going to need somebody who's going to be able to produce those steady results. I'm the girl for that job. Third thing you're going to need is somebody to engage teams. So right now you're about 100 people at the organization. In order to scale to what your goals are for your revenue potential, you're going to need somebody who's going to be able to enact those teams, find their strengths, and unleash them out to do the work that they're supposed to do. Over the past X amount of years, I've been able to produce and hire X amount of people. And what we've been able to do is keep a retention rate that's super high, and that saves the company money over time. So not only are we going to find you the right people for the organization to help it reach its goals, we're also going to cut back on costs because we're not going to continually have to hire all these new people all the time. And then finally, the biggest thing that I've seen with CEOs, specifically in the apparel industry, and what makes a company succeed or fail is that they're going to need to be somebody who is a feisty decision maker, somebody who is able to look at the big picture, see the direction and the vision that we're going for, and be able to make decisions immediately and effectively and have the trust of the organization. I'm happy to share examples of that, but I've been able to do that in Spanx, and we've been able to produce a revenue of XYZ. So I'd love to share a little bit more about what I've been able to do, but do you have any questions? So I did that all on the fly. That was not something that I prepared. I don't have it written down anywhere. This is literally me looking at her profile. So I used some of the things that she had on her profile, and then me just riffing of how I would do that for a client. Like how I would explain to Sarah, this is how you need to present yourself when they answer the question, tell me about yourself. Notice what I didn't do. I didn't walk through every single small key accomplishment that I did. What I did was I created a vision, I created a structure, and I walked them through how the CEO of this new company needed to act. And then I put myself in the shoes of that person. I paused and asked them if they had any questions. So the reason why people get tell me about yourself really wrong is because they just talk about themselves, and they don't talk about themselves in light of the company that they're speaking to and their goals and their things that they care about. So for yourself, hopefully this gives you a good idea of like what to do and what not to do when answering this question. It's really simple. If you break down what I did when I was talking about Sarah Blakely and how I would present her if she was applying for and interviewing for a CEO level role at Outdoor Voices, I integrated things that were about the industry. I told a little bit small narratives. I dropped some kind of hints, if you will, about what she was capable of doing. Again, giving them a teaser, not giving them the full picture of everything. And then what I was able to do is break it out into 3 parts. I shared a little bit about who she was, big picture. This is who I am. told a little bit about how she got there, right? So this is where a lot of people get messed up. They'll go from they'll say like, oh, I first started here, then I moved here, then I moved here. And what that does is it draws attention to the gaps in your resume or weird things in your resume. So a lot of you that are listening to this, you're like, okay, I had a gap for 2 years. How do I explain that? This methodology allows you to completely almost eliminate that. Now, if they want to ask you questions about it or they draw attention to it, fine, you can answer those questions. But I have just found with working with clients that if a client completely doesn't talk about it, they don't need to bring up the elephant in the room, basically, for this instance. So sharing a little bit about how she got there, very super short, sweet. And then what I was able to do is start integrating what was important to the employer with their job description immediately into my tell me about yourself. Because I jumped and launched right in of what I'm excited about for the future, which was working with as the CEO of Outdoor Voices. And I walked through those 4 things that were really important for that role, which were the innovating proactively, the steady results, the engaging teams, and the feisty decision maker. The other thing that I did within there is once I broke that down, it's easy for a listener to understand what you're saying. So unless you're actually drawing on a board of like, tell me about yourself on the board, it's really hard for somebody to visualize it. So you have to create structure in your answer to make sure that the person that's listening is tracking, right? You have to break it down for them so that they understand what you have to offer to them and you're super crystal clear. This is where a lot of people get it wrong. They're not really clear on what they have to offer. And it's your job as somebody who sees themselves as a leader, as a female leader on the CEO track to do that. If you do that, I can guarantee you're going to have so much more luck actually getting the job because not many people are doing this. So I'm letting you in on a secret of what I tell people in my one-on-one coaching program or my group coaching program, Recruit the Employer, of how we walk through this. The other thing that I want to point out is that Sarah was very confident, right? So if I'm acting as Sarah was very confident in how she delivered that. There was no questions about if she was capable of doing it. There was a lot of clarity around what the company needed. So she almost operated as if she was a subject matter expert, which she is, and acted as if she was a consultant, right? So there is a aura almost around her that's like, wow, this woman really knows her stuff and she's telling us what we need. She's not wrong, right? She's not wrong based off of her job description. She's not wrong. And so what that does is it positions you as a thought leader in your space when you enter into an interview. Those are the main things that I feel like really make a difference and turn the needle as to whether somebody asks you back or not, because that's usually the first question that's asked. Tell me about yourself. And if you don't have a solid answer to that, you can pretty much guarantee you're not coming back. And so my goal with the people that are in my program, if this sounds compelling to you, you want to know, hey, how do I get the same level of confidence, or how do I portray myself, or how do I describe myself in a way that you just described Sarah on the fly? We can help you do that in our program, Recruit the Employer, and we would love to help you in that process. This is super, super fun for me to get somebody's resume, get the jobs that they're looking at, and really help them craft that narrative and craft their career story so that they can tell that to an employer, feel really confident about it, and obviously get asked back, because why would they not want to hire somebody that's capable of producing those results for them, right? First, they have to believe it. Then they have to actually explain it in a way that's compelling. So if you struggle with that communication, if you struggle with knowing how to tell your story in a way that's interesting, in a way that you feel good about, in a way that really showcases the results you're able to produce for a company, because a company is not hiring you just to hire you. They're hiring you for a specific purpose. And once you get super granular on what that purpose is and how you fit into that narrative, you're going to be excellent and obviously get hired for the job. Like, it's pretty much foolproof. People who use this methodology are able to get around to the next level. If they do it well, it's literally foolproof. So again, if you're interested in working together, we would love to help support you in that and helping you craft that narrative. The best way to reach out to us or reach out to me is actually go to, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, which I'm very active on LinkedIn, as probably many of you know. But you can also apply to be a part of the program. We really specialize in helping females that are in mid to senior level roles, or usually making over 100K, see themselves on the CEO track and want to take control of their career again and be the CEO of their life and career. Our Recruit the Employer program is designed for women like you. So if you're that woman and you want to make a career move in 2020, just reach out to us. We would love to help you to see if you would be a good fit for the program. And if you're not, we'll direct you to somebody else that we think that you would better be suited for. So if you want to go over to www.geneviviano.com/apply, that's how you can apply to work together. We would be so honored to have you be a part of our program and get to connect with other women that are going through similar things as you are in this job search process and see them on a similar track as you. I really hope that this was super valuable for you. This is a really, really fun episode for me. It was fun to just pretend like I was Sarah Blakely for a hot second and channel her energy. And just share with you how to answer the question in an example versus just giving you some formula. Because I think a formula without an example is kind of half-baked, and we want to be a little bit more full-baked with this. So we hope to see you back next week. Next week, we're super excited that we're going to be talking about some other things that we find really, really valuable, which is why hiring a resume writer is not the best use of your money. So that's going to be a really heated, probably discussion with anybody listening to this that is a resume writer. But I just have some thoughts around that of why you don't need to hire a resume writer and what you need to do instead. So if you're thinking about doing that, hold off until next week so you can hear this episode. All right, we'll see you then. Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for listening to Your Career Story podcast. I would love to get to meet you. And there are a couple of ways that we can connect in between episodes. First and foremost, you know I love my LinkedIn. Second is via Instagram. And third is over on my website. I actually have a special spot just for you full of fun, free resources. So all you have to do is go to www.jennaviviano.com/resources. Super simple for a bunch of freebies that will help you boost your career. Hope to see you next week.